Without further ado, William Schnoebelen, former Illuminati, real Illuminati, folks, former Illuminati, former satanic priest, former Catholic priest, and former cultist, magician, and everything else. And William, how you doing, brother?
Doing real well. It's great to be here.
Yeah, it's great to see you, man, and I'm happy to have you on because I noticed that you never get the respect you deserve. I mean, I know you're not out for all the glitz and glamour and all that stuff, but you need to be highlighted because I've been studying you for about 4 years now, all your work and everything. I learned a lot from you, a great deal, and you need to be on the spotlight because the world needs to hear your information.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
No problem. And you want to tell us basically a brief history about yourself, a little introduction, besides when I gave you and everything else?
Well, basically, I started out life wanting to serve God. I was born and raised Catholic, went to the minor seminary. While I was studying to be a priest, I had a professor who was a Catholic priest, turned me on to the occult, believe it or not. And he told me that, the Lord was a priest, a magician, an occultist, and that if I wanted to be like, quote unquote, another Christ, I should also pursue the occult. Now, of course, that's utter nonsense, but I was only like 19 years old at the time. College-like, what would I know? And so I started doing that. And when I finally got out of the college, had my degree, I was a first-degree witch. And from there, I studied with the Druids. I was personally initiated by the Grand Master Druid of North America. This is all in the early 70s. Got involved with Freemasonry on his advice, that it would be a very Luciferian thing to do, and got involved in the Church of Satan, got involved in hardcore Satanism, and I think we need to talk a little bit more about some of these things, obviously.
Oh, definitely. You got the floor. I mean, whatever you want to bring up, because what you have to say is very important information. And, folks, he's got the certificates. If you go YouTube, Exposing the Illuminati from Within, he goes all over the country, does seminars. He's got the actual certificates to prove his worth. I mean, like, he's got one from the Church of Satan. It was signed by Anton LaVey. He's was a satanic priest. Thank God. Thank God you're on the good side now. And I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, that's fine. I'm just was saying, that during that time of getting into hardcore Satanism, I got an invitation to join the Illuminati. Which we can get into in greater detail if you're interested. But because people wonder, well, how do you get into the Illuminati? Obviously you can be born into it, but there are other considerations involved in my case. And partly it was because of all the Masonic involvement I had. I mean, I was involved in esoteric Freemasonry, which is continental masonry from Europe, not just the stuff that people are familiar with here in America, but things like the Rite of Memphis Mizraim, the Rite of Grand Orient, and some of those things are very, very ungodly things. Well, anyhow, I'm going along like this, and ultimately, I was pretty deep in, even to the point of drinking human blood and being involved with vampirism and stuff like that. And a lady prayed for me. She saw a check that I'd written to the Church of Satan, my yearly dues, and she wrote on the back of the check, and she sent it back from the bank where the Church of Satan did its banking at that time. It was in San Francisco, and she said, "I'll be praying for you in the name of Jesus." And when she started praying for me, literally within a couple of days, my whole life fell apart. And I basically cried out to Lucifer because I thought he was the true God at that time. I cried out for a sign from him. And instead of, something wonderful happening from the standpoint of the dark side, the Almighty arranged for me to have a visit from two young girls who were Satanists all the way from Chicago, and they brought me Christian comic books about the dangers of the occult. I mean, that's the kind of awesome deity that we serve, that he was able to actually bring a witness in the form of two teenage Satanists. And they brought these comic books, and I basically kind of sneered at them and didn't really want to look at them, unfortunately. But in a way, I mean, I know all of this is from the Lord because the next day, Mormon missionaries showed up at our door. And that's going to be a part of what we're speaking about tonight, is the whole issue of Romney and the Mormon Church and how that ties into the Illuminati. But to be brief, right now, we had been told years earlier that if you want to really have the ultimate Luciferian experience, join the Mormon Church. That was the words of this high-level Druid guy. And so we joined the church and was involved for 5 years. I became an elder. I became an elders forum president. I taught for the church. I was a home teacher, obviously, which, is a kind of pastoral visitation program they have. And we went to the temple. And I went to the Salt Lake Temple, and that's a whole other line of discussion if you want to have it. But, Mormonism is not what it seems. And in my case, the Almighty used those 5 years of Mormonism to get me to the point where I was reading the Bible, where I knew I was a sinner. And in 1984, I finally realized that the world's greatest anti-Mormon book is the King James Bible, which ironically they use. That's their kind of official Bible. So anyway, I remembered those comic books and that there was something in the back about how to get born again. And so I knelt at the foot of my bed and took off my magic Mormon underwear because I didn't want any static on the line. And I prayed and asked the Lord Yah'Shua Jesus to be my master and my Lord. And that was on June 22nd, 1984. And I've never looked back.
Oh, God bless, man.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's amazing because, you can see in the Bible, too, all the prophets, disciples, they were murderers. They were into the occult themselves. They were pagans. They had a hard life, and they got transformed by God. People out there that don't believe in God, you know what? You need to get your priorities straight because this is real stuff. And regardless what you believe, folks, the people who run this planet, they're not atheists at all, folks. They are Illuminati, okay? They are Luciferian worshiping scum, bottom line. And go ahead, Bill.
Well, yes, that's absolutely true. And, the problem is that many people that are fighting this stuff, they think they can do that with physical weapons. And I remember many, many years ago, I'm sure some of your listeners and viewers are familiar with Lyndon LaRouche. And his organization asked me to give a talk for them, of all people, because they're kind of a sort of an odd political sect. And he had made the statement, this is probably in 1988 or 1990, that he was going to kill Satan. Lyndon LaRouche, was going to kill Satan and take over the world for the good guys. And I just kind of got up there, and as a minister of the gospel, I had to tell him, nobody's going to kill Satan except Yah'Shua.
Exactly.
And, if you think you can come up against spiritual enemies with physical weapons, you're going to be in the position of, like Native Americans in a war canoe coming up against a battleship. Because, it's a whole different level of warfare. And
absolutely. It's a spiritual war. Like the Bible says in Ephesians, we don't wrestle against flesh, but powers of principality and darkness.
Absolutely. And that's where we need to be. Not that, there aren't practical things we can do down here on the earth plane too, but we need to be praying. We need to really be interceding for this nation. And if there's nothing else that comes out of this, that's what I want to say tonight, is that prayer is vital right now, because I think we're on a very important turning point. And I think that there's nothing that can be said that's more important than that.
Exactly. And, that's an incredible story, man. And I seen your seminars at the Prophecy Club. And if these guys want to plug his website, it's on a computer right there, right on number 8. And, again, with the oneaccord.org, you want to talk about those 3 books you got? Throne of Fools and, definitely plug those books because there's important information in those books.
The one you're talking about earlier, it's actually a DVD. It's Throne of Fools, and it kind of discusses the fact that we've got, Obama versus Romney. Once again, the powers that be have set us up with one devil versus another devil. And the question becomes then, what do you do with something like that? And you know, I try to provide some answers, you know, from the standpoint of is one better than the other? Is it like choosing the lesser of two evils? And I think it's a very important message for right now, being that we're so close now to the election, and it looks as though Romney's pulling ahead. Another thing that we have talking about prayer is we have a book on spiritual warfare, Blood on the Doorposts, which, as many people have said, is one of the best books on how to do warfare against these dark forces and also how to be set free.
Well, that's very important. And, you know, the thing is, a lot of Christians lack this, folks. I mean, Christians, the regular churches, I mean, it's great to hear about Jesus, but you know, if you go to a church and a year goes by, 2 years, you hear the same messages over and over and over. But they never get into spiritual warfare. I mean, especially the 501c3 churches, they don't want you to know none of this stuff. Spiritual warfare, folks, is the most important thing a Christian should be getting to and knowing. Because, again, we battle against powers of principalities and darkness, not against flesh. I mean, these people like the Rothschilds, Obama, Romney, these are just puppets. That's all they are. It's the evil above them that control them is what you got to battle.
Yes, that's absolutely correct. And that's the problem, is that a lot of people don't understand that. They don't realize that basically you're looking at sock puppets up there in the media, whether they're media personalities or
smelly ones too.
Yes, unfortunately, that's often the case. So yeah, it's very critical. And the other thing, you know, of course, the book that probably made me famous is the book on Masonry here. This happens to be a first edition. The cover looks a little different now.
You want to hold it up a little higher?
Yeah, sorry. This is
there you go.
Masonry Beyond the Light. And basically talks about why Masonry is dangerous for anybody, especially for Christians. And that virtually every day we get phone calls about families whose lives have been ruined because of a husband or a grandparent or something being involved in a Masonic lodge. And I was in it myself for 9 years, and I'll tell you, it is one of the most spiritually toxic, dangerous, diabolical organizations on this planet, because it's basically a feeding program for the Illuminati.
Oh, and if I'm correct here, the Blue Lodge is the first 3 degrees, and that's where they suck a lot of Christians in, and they have a Bible on the altar. They say, "Oh yeah, we believe in higher power. You can believe in God. Come on in." And they suck all kinds. Like we got a picture of Aleister Crowley up on screen with Candace Crowley, and these two look like I think it's Aleister Crowley resurrected with a wig on. You know, if you ask me, but this girl's a witch. I mean, she really is. But if you can see on screen when you watch the replay, or whatever, we got a picture of Aleister Crowley with devil's fangs on. I mean, it's great. But yeah, Aleister Crowley was a big part of this. But yeah, Masonry, they draw Christians in. They say they're a Christian organization, and they even pastors. How many pastors you know, Mr. Schnoebelen, that are Masons?
Well, it was said at one time, I don't know if this is still true, that 40% of the Southern Baptist Convention pastors are Freemasons. So when you consider that's the largest Protestant denomination in America, and it's not the only one, I don't mean to pick on them, but I think most of the mainline churches, you know, the Lutherans, Episcopalians, have an awful lot of Masons among their deacons and their pastors and their elders, and that's really bad, because you have a headship issue then. These people are the spiritual head of a flock, and, you know, nasty material flows downhill, and that's the problem. Is that they're defiling their flocks. They're like the idle shepherds that are being warned about in the prophetic writings of the Bible, you know, that do not take care of the sheep. And as a result, we have all of these issues on our hands, and why the church has basically lost a lot of its clout in America is because we're full of Norman Vincent Peale type pastors. And of course, Norman Vincent Peale was a 33rd degree Mason.
Unbelievable. And now a lot of Masons degree. Now, a lot of people don't know, like I said, about the ancient rite of Memphis Mizoram that goes up to the 99th degree. Am I correct on it?
Actually, there's 360 degrees in it.
Unbelievable. And you are a 90th degree? Is that right?
Yes. That's
unbelievable.
Correct. Yeah, well, I had a gentleman, well, I use the word advisedly, come all the way from France to bring me into the higher levels of esoteric Freemasonry. That was, of course, back in the 70s. But it's dangerous stuff, because the higher you get in Masonry, the more you see it's anti-Christian. Like the Rite, the Grand Orient Rite is extremely anti-Christian. And the Masonry we see in America, it's kind of been cleaned up a little on the outside. But actually, it's just as bad. It's just got a better public relations arm in America.
Yeah, exactly. And Masonry, again, I mean, they promise light but provide darkness. That was John Quincy Adams, I believe, when he, the 6th president of the United States, when he quoted about Freemasonry. He says Freemasonry promises light but is darkness, and I think that's the exact quote. I'm not sure, but. Even our founding fathers, some of them try to warn us about Masonry, and it's destructive. It really is.
Well, yes, because it's kind of become our civil religion, and like I was involved in the production of a video, "The Secret Mysteries of America's Beginnings," and the New Atlantis, and we document in that series, how even though everybody says, "Oh, America's a Christian nation," well, if it is, then why are all of the buildings in our nation's capital full of pagan symbols?
And by the way, we got that set, I think on InfoWarsStore.com, that whole set, America's Secret Beginnings, and I watched them all, and I watched them 3 times, actually, and a lot of information. You, Doc Marquise, I mean, you guys are great. I mean, especially exposing secret stuff, especially the architecture. I mean, like, if anybody sees that, you got Rome, the Vatican, you got Washington, D.C., and Paris, France. There is nothing godly about that. I mean, you got obelisks for Osiris. I mean, like, you got they're built under the sign of the 3 stars and the 7 stars. It's some Masonic stuff. The blazing dog star. I mean, it's all architecture built to promote the coming of the New Age, the coming of the Aquarius, the coming of the Antichrist.
Exactly. And even, we have the Washington Monument, which is the world's largest obelisk, as I understand it.
555 feet tall, and it represents death and resurrection.
Yes, but not what Christians think of as death and resurrection.
Exactly.
It's actually a giant phallic symbol, because that is the god of Freemasonry. And see, that spiritual fact, which most Masons don't understand, is what makes Masonry so wicked, is it's Baal worship. It's the worship of the false god Baal. And because of that, a lot of men who become Masons, even if they're good men, they end up being seduced into perverse activities. And we're coming out now with a brand new DVD. It'll be out probably within a week. It's called Freemasonry Fail in the First Degree. And in that DVD, I talk about the fact that, even in first degree, just a Mason has just gone through the very first level of Blue Lodge. And you're right, the Blue Lodge is foundational to everything else. That they have knelt at the altar of Baal. They have sworn an oath that is forbidden in the Bible, and because of that, the doorways of their lives are blown open to all manner of evil, and you have so many cases, I mean, literally hundreds and hundreds of cases we've heard over the years of families where the father has gotten involved in pedophilia, child abuse, things of that nature, just very, very, very unsavory stuff, sinful things that just ruin families and that ruin lives.
Oh, absolutely. In the book of Matthew alone, I mean, the book of Matthew warns you about taking sworn oaths upon your blood. I mean, every degree you're swearing your blood upon this, and you conduct a ritual and everything, and about keeping things a secret, because Jesus says, have I kept anything a secret? I mean, the book of Matthew alone just destroys the whole philosophical view of Masonry.
Exactly. So that's a very big part of why the church has lost its punch, is that there's so many Masonic pastors and so many Masonic members. And I mean, the famous evangelist Dwight Moody in the 19th century, he said that as long as there was Masonry in the church, there would be no revival. And that only when Masonry was cast out of the church, and people were told either get out of the lodge or get out of the church by courageous pastors, that the church would just sort of be sitting there simmering, lukewarm, with no real moves of the Holy Spirit being able to happen.
I got a friend in Pennsylvania. He's a reverend, and they right in I don't want to say where he's from, his name or whatever, because he was telling me that's Masonic town where he's from. And basically, everybody's a Mason just about, and he's scared. I mean, him as a Mason, he spoke out about Masonry, and he got his life threatened. I mean, they even beat him up a couple of times, and they told him to keep his mouth shut about it. But the thing is, he still goes on with it, and he's a brave man. But, I mean, a lot of pastors are not aware of the dangers of Masonry. I mean, like, how many churches out there have Masons as pastors?
Well, it's really a scandal, and it's a scandal in the body of Christ to have these kind of false shepherds. And unfortunately, at first, they don't know it. They don't get it. They join the lodge, like it says in Hosea, my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. They join the lodge because they think it's something good to do, or some guy in their church tells them to do it. And then once you've got one foot in the door, it's like being in a spiritual bear trap. And it's very hard to get out. And without the grace of God, you just aren't going to get out.
Oh, yeah, because what they do is they give you grand names like Master Mason, and make you feel important, make you feel powerful. When you come out there, you feel, oh, I know stuff that other people don't. And you just feel proud of yourself, whatever. And they install that upon you. And that old saying, power corrupts, absolute power corrupts. Absolutely, and that's what they do to you. They give you they slowly increment you and turn you from a monotheism into eventually to believe that Lucifer is God. I mean, like, to look at the all-seeing eye, for example. They tell you, oh, it's the eye of God. Then you learn it's the eye of Horus, and eventually you learn it's Lucifer. With the 1,000 points illumination and all that stuff. And now, if you want to explain to people, what's the ties? I mean, where the ties come from, Masonry and the Illuminati?
Well, of course, in one way or another, the Illuminati has been around since the days of Nimrod, way back right after the Tower of Babel. And Masonry itself claims that Nimrod is one of its greatest members. And the point is that down through the centuries, there's always been this serpentine trail, I call it the path of the royal secret. And it's this Luciferian conspiracy that's underneath the surface. I mean, we have a lot of Christians that contact us and say, oh, well, I don't believe in conspiracies. Well, the trouble with that is you read Psalm 2. It talks about how the kings of the earth conspire together against Yah'Shua and against his anointed. And, of course, the anointing is another word for Messiah or of Christ. And so they've been conspiring for a very long time. And what happened and by that I mean the last 500 years or so, is that we had a group called the Society of Jesus come along, the Jesuit order, which was founded on Illuminati principles. And many people don't realize that the original name of the Jesuit order was Los Ilumbrados, because the guy that started it was Ignatius Loyola. He was a Spanish soldier who supposedly got religion. And anyway, Los Ilumbrados is just the Spanish word of saying the illuminated ones. And so from that beginning, in the last 500 years or so, it started to grow, it started to blend, and then, of course, with the formation of the Mother Lodge in England, that was in 1717, that kind of codified what is called speculative masonry. That's occult masonry. We're not talking here about people that are laying bricks. We're talking about people who are doing more than that. They're involved in Rosicrucianism, in occultism. A lot of the people who were the early speculative masons were people like, Francis Bacon and Elias Ashmole and some of these other people who were very, very high-level esoteric magicians. And all this started coming together in 1776, which, yes, everybody says, oh, well, that's the year America was started. Well, not really. It was actually the year the Illuminati was started. And on May 1st, which is a high witch holiday, by the guy you mentioned earlier, Adam Weishaupt, and he started blending Masonry with Illuminism. And the end result is that by the time the Illuminati was officially disbanded in the latter part of the 18th century, it had thoroughly, like a virus, infected the Masonic Lodge, and then also very much involved in many Protestant churches by the time of the 20th century. So that's how this conspiracy worked its way through the centuries, very briefly.
And yeah, exactly. People, this is in history documents. I mean, this is not conspiracy, because you could look this up for yourself. It's secrets hidden in plain sight. That's what it really is. And now, hey, you want to take some phone calls? Because a guy has been waiting for about an hour now.
That'd be great. Sure.
All right, sure. And People's Branch from North Carolina, you're on the air. Hello? Hi, People's Branch, you there?
Thanks for having me.
Oh, sorry to keep you waiting for so long. And you got a question for Mr. Schnoebelen?
Yeah, for sure. Could you tell me, is there any movements out there like the peoplesbranch.org that really is after solutions?
Oh, yeah. I mean, we're about solutions here. Mr. Schnoebelen, I mean, he's about a lot of solutions with the Illuminati and everything. And you know, you just got to, you know, study his books and everything else, and our books here and Infowars.com. But the solution is, you know, what he's doing now is a solution. Waking people up, that's a big solution. And what it does, when you wake up, you become aware of the stuff, and these secret societies, these people in high power, become less powerful because they're not hidden anymore.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. I'm not familiar with this particular organization, but I do know there are, and this is how the church started. The church started as a little underground movement, and as it says in the Bible, you know, they ended up turning the world upside down. And the trouble is, in the last couple hundred years, the world has turned the church upside down. And we need to do some more spiritual judo on that, if you'll pardon the expression, and again, turn the world upside down. And it's done by small groups, you know, by people who are faithful, who are praying, and who, as
absolutely.
you say, get the word out.
Spread awareness and everything. And we got JR from California. You're on the air with Mr. Schnoebelen. How you doing? And sorry for waiting for so long. You got a question for Mr. Schnoebelen?
Yes, I do. I just wanted to say that I agree with him on the Tower of Babel and all of the stuff in Genesis and Psalms, but I wanted to know what is the easiest thing and where can we see the Illuminati in everyday life, and how can we protect ourselves from them?
Well, basically, I mean, as you've said, they're hidden in plain sight. And, you know, I think many of the listeners here know about all of this. I mean, you know, the dollar bill, you know, the Washington Monument, all of these things are their symbols they love because, see, Lucifer is the head of the Illuminati, and he's an egomaniac. So he loves to sign his work. And that's why whenever these things happen, you know, whether there's some kind of terrorist attack or some other bizarre thing, you know, it always somebody will find the Illuminati signature on that. And, you know, there's references, there's buzzwords like, you know, George Bush's famous 1,000 points of light reference, you know, and of course Masons are always talking about light too. I mean, on a day-to-day basis, look to the local Masonic lodges. Look to the Masonic lodges in your community because they are like the tentacles, if you will, of the Illuminati. And of course, on higher levels, you have the House of the Temple in Washington, D.C., which is a very, very evil place. It's the headquarters of the American Scottish Rite. And all of these places are like citadels of power because there's an occult doctrine that by building things in certain ways, and I talked about this in several of my books and videos, it's called megapolasomancy. If you build like, say, the shape of our nation's capital is actually, again, a phallic symbol, and it's based on the concept of a temple of Lucifer, just like the Vatican, as somebody has said.
Oh, yeah, the Vatican in Paris, France, and all that. And we got Tyler from Wisconsin. You're on the air. Hi, Tyler, yeah?
Yep, hello?
Hey, how you doing?
Yeah, pretty good. I totally agree with everything he's saying.
Oh, great. And awesome. You got a question for Mr. Schnoebelen?
Yeah, actually I do. I was wondering if there's anything else we can do to try to protect ourselves and try to get away from this kind of spirituality, I guess.
Well, absolutely. You have to accept the Messiah. You have to be saved through the blood of Christ. That's the number one thing because he will protect you. And then listen to the voice of his Spirit because, you know, he can direct things. I mean, right now in parts of the world where Christians are very, very heavily persecuted, they have to rely on the voice of the Holy Spirit, and just to even know where a meeting is, even to know, okay, where is the church service, because if people knew where they were, they'd be killed. And this is not good, so we have to be open enough to the Spirit to be listening. And that's the critical thing, to hear his voice and then to follow. And then, beyond that, as has been mentioned, spiritual warfare is critical. I mean, because you can have all the guns and all the ammunition and all this stuff, but if they come after you with spiritual darkness, with spiritual power, because that's what they're doing, all these physical weapons are not going to do you any good against the power of Satan.
Oh, exactly. It's a spiritual war. We need to be spiritually ready. And we got Mike from FEMA Region 10, and this is Dan from FEMA Region 6. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. Pray for you and the crew and Alex every day.
Oh, thank you. We need the prayers, brother. Like, more important than money, anything else, we need prayers, because we're the tip of the spear, basically, right into the New World Order, and they're attacking us all the time, and, spiritually, everything, and probably putting curses on us as we speak. And you got a question for Mr. Schnoebelen?
Yeah, I got two quick questions for him. So we know, groups like CFR, Trilateral, Bilderberg, they're relatively low, and then you move up, you got the Committee of 300, the Knights of Garter, whatever. And the Illuminati, when I hear that, it seems like such a blanket term to me, like there's so many groups, and then, there's the Black Pope. And so to him, if he can explain what is like, I mean, is it the 13 families at the top, or... who are these top groups? And then also if he has any interesting stories about, these groups coming after him, since, people like him who come out usually are attacked by the Illuminati, etc.
Well, sure. I mean, in my book, Masonry Beyond the Light, and in several of my DVDs, I break down the code of the pyramid that's on the back of the dollar bill, because there's a hierarchy there that's represented by, there's 13 ranks of that pyramid, which again is an interesting number. And at the near top, you have the Illuminati, and then at the pinnacle of the Illuminati, there is the 9 unknown men. And this is a little different than what maybe some other people are saying, but this at least was the organization that I was involved in. Every continent has an unknown man over it. North America, South America, Europe, etc. And there's 9 of them in the world. And they in turn report to the 7. And the 7 are actually, I don't know this for a fact, but I've been told they're actually fallen angelic beings. They're fallen angels of incredible evil power. And then above the 7 is actually, Lucifer himself. And, of course, he is a fallen cherub. He's not a fallen angel. A cherub is different than an angel, and if someone has a question about that, we can talk about that. But that's basically the upper part of the hierarchy. The lower part of the hierarchy are all these different weird occult groups like Lucis Trust, some of the things you've mentioned, the CFR, Trilateral Commission, Bilderbergers, and, of course, at the lower level, you have, the Freemasons, which don't know it, but they are like cannon fodder spiritually for the Illuminati. And in terms of efforts on our lives, I just tell people, my dad can beat up their dad. Hallelujah. And we have had, we've been shot at. We've had attempts on our life. We've tried to have people run us off the road, poisonings, illnesses. I mean, but our God is greater. And
absolutely.
He is the Almighty One. And so as long as he wants me in service down here, I'm not afraid. I mean, there's nothing they can do because, like
exactly, and that's how we are. If it was too, we know our lives are being, put at stake, especially yours, the stuff and what you've been through, and God's going to protect us. And the thing is, the elite hate about this because they know if God has a mission for me, for Alex Jones, for you, and for John Bowen and everybody else, if he has a mission, nobody can do anything about it. Nobody, not even Lucifer himself. And we got another caller, Carlos from Illinois. You're there. You there, brother?
Yeah, how you?
Awesome. How you doing? Thank you for calling. And you got a question for Mr. Schnoebelen?
Yeah, I was wondering if you guys read that story in Drudge about, I believe it was earlier this week, about the scientists who fell asleep and ended up finding heaven. through his pineal gland. Do you have anything to say about that?
I didn't hear nothing. How about you, Bill?
No, I'm not familiar with that, but I know they're doing a lot of amazing work with the brain. And, you know, people forget our brains were created by Yah'Shua God, and they're created to hunger for Him. That's a deep need that we all have, and unfortunately, a lot of people are looking in the wrong place. I did that for 16 years. I spent 16 years of my adult life looking for heaven everywhere but in the right place. So, you know, I mean, the pineal gland, I mean, some people call it the third eye, some people call it the Ajna chakra, and, you know, the point is, our soul is bigger than that. Our spirit is bigger than that. And we don't need necessarily to activate the Ajna chakra or whatever to become quote-unquote enlightened. I mean, I had the devil take his forefinger and drive it into my skull, for heaven's sakes, to be enlightened. And it ain't fun. And fortunately, Yah'Shua set me free from that many years ago. But, you know, you don't need to be messing with the brain. You need to be praying. And there's some people who will take drugs, you know. Like
DMT is one of them. Is that correct?
Yeah.
The Bible warns us about using pharmakeia because it opens this third eye, the pineal gland, that brings you into the spiritual world. That's why the Native Americans and everything else thought they were talking to spirits and everything. But you actually communicate into the spirit world with unclean spirits. And it's the scary stuff. And the New Age Christians, they call them, and New Agers out there, think they're talking to spirits and all this stuff. You're not talking to spirits. You're talking to demons. Anything to do with hallucinations and everything, drugs and all that, DMT especially, it's dangerous. The Bible warns us, don't use this pharmakeia, it calls it. And this is all to do with, communicating with spirits, but they're unclean spirits, like I said.
Well, I think we need to make your listeners aware that the word in English for pharmakeia is sorcery. And you can certainly see our word pharmacy today that we use are pharmaceutical drugs. That's actually what it talks about in the book of Revelations when it says Babylon the Great.
You guys want to pull up an image of the medical symbol with the snake, the serpent staff? Yeah.
The caduceus, yeah, that is, anyhow, Babylon the Great, it says that she deceived the world with her sorceries. And everybody thinks, oh, that means like magical stuff and all that, and it does. But the word there is actually pharmakeia, the word you're using. And it means, literally, it means drugs. And I have a couple of DVDs like The Medical Conspiracy and Medical Murder, where I talk about how the Illuminati have pretty much gotten control of the healthcare systems, at least in the Western world, especially in America. And they're trying to push all these pharmaceutical drugs which destroy the body and destroy the mind. And it's exactly what the book of Revelation warns about.
And it's on screen right now, Bill. You want to describe that symbol with the double serpent up on the staff there? The caduceus?
Yeah, well, it actually goes back. It's related to Hermes or Mercury, and it's the twin. It represents what's called the Ida and the Pingala in yoga, going up the spine to release the Kundalini, and this is not good. I mean, because it's like the serpent force, they call it in the occult. And
well, the Kundalini magic, that's what people like Joel Osteen uses and, these false prophets to say we can heal you. And they actually make people get off wheelchairs and walk around, dance around like retards and bark like dogs and everything. They think it's the spirit of God, but it's Kundalini magic. And exactly what Bill was just describing. It does. It goes up its energy like a coiled snake in your spine, and just bam, the people jump out of the wheelchair, run around barking like dogs, and they think it's this miracle. It's satanic.
Yeah, it is very dangerous stuff, and unfortunately, you're right. A lot of Christian leaders and TV preachers and stuff are involved in this because they think as long as they can get results, they don't care where it comes from, and that's not of God. We're supposed to not do the things the Gentiles do. We're not supposed to be involved in the dark arts and things like that, and yet many people do it because they think it's a way to draw crowds and, of course, to get more money in the offering plate.
And we got one more caller here. David from California there.
Yes, I am.
How you doing today?
Doing all right. How are you guys doing?
Awesome. How you liking the California coast over there?
It's great when they're not spraying chem clouds all over us.
Oh, yeah. They've been bothering us the last couple of days. But you got a question for Mr. Schnoebelen?
Yes, I do. Actually, I was going to ask him about John Todd, and I'm sure he gets this question a lot, but I haven't really heard anything about him except that he had gotten arrested or under rape charges. I don't know if there's any truth to that or anything else like that. And also, yeah, and also, as far as spiritual warfare goes, I believe that God has something good for me and everything else, but I believe that also Satan has been trying to destroy me through all these various means and everything else, and he's failed at every one except for one, which is a woman. And I was wondering what I could do, even though I pray and everything else. It's just that my my willpower is kind of weak when it comes to that, and if he has any suggestions for that.
Well, okay, I'll try and keep both questions in mind here.
Okay.
What I would say about Mr. Todd, as I understand it, he's now deceased. He was murdered in prison. I think it was in South Carolina. He was accused of statutory rape and was serving time in prison. I heard a tape that he smuggled out. I don't agree with everything he taught, but I think basically he really did a great service to the body of Messiah, because he got a lot. When no one else was talking about it, he warned about the dangers of the occult. He warned about the dangers of Freemasonry and the Illuminati and stuff like that way back, like in the 70s.
And again, you got Mr. Schnoebelen, Bill Schnoebelen, from with One Accord.org, great website. His books are on there and everything else. And folks, please call in, because we need money to come up with other stuff like this. I mean, people need to hear this stuff, to hear truth. I mean, stuff that no other radio stations would even cover with, or touch with a 10-foot pole. You'll never hear mainstream media or any Glenn Beck's or any of these people covering this issue. There's only very few channels and radio stations that will actually touch something like this. And again, it's a pleasure to have you on, Mr. Schnoebelen. And I want to switch gears a little bit. I mean, I know we're coming upon a time of Halloween. What's your, if you want to give a description of the bloodbaths that took place, and people think Halloween's just one night, and we know it's 3 days. I think it's the 29th, 30th, and 31st. It's a Druid holiday, and this is where the trick or treat comes from, the bobbing for apples, the jack-o'-lantern, I mean, folk, and also bonfires, which were bonfires. And Mr. Schnoebelen, what's your take? And you want to tell us the history of this?
Well, actually, it goes back even further than the Druids. It goes back again to the dawn of time, to Nimrod. And because in the northern hemisphere, now we're seeing the days are getting shorter. The sun appears to be going away. There was this idea that on this night, Halloween, that the sun god was dying, quote unquote. And of course, this was very scary to these primitive peoples, and the devil and his minions played on this fear, and they said, okay, because of this, you need to perform rituals, you need to do sacrifices to bring the sun god back to life. And so the sun god is then reborn on the next high witch holiday, which is Yule, which is December 23rd. And see, that's why the whole thing got started of quote-unquote Jesus being born on December 25th. Actually, he was not born anywhere near that date. It's a pagan holiday. It's called Yule. And but the point is that it's the rebirth of the sun god. But you need to have all of these dark things being done back around the time of October 31st to supposedly bring these things about. So in Satanism, in the Illuminati, it's a time of profound bloodletting. It's a time of human sacrifice and just all sorts of unspeakable things. And you're right, a lot of the iconography that you see around Halloween is highly occult. I mean, black cats, witches riding on broomsticks, the various things, the jack-o'-lantern, all of these things are symbols of pagan deities. And that's why, again, as believers, we're not supposed to be a part of the world system. we're supposed to keep to the feasts of Yah'Shua, to the feasts that are in the Bible, rather than celebrating Halloween. And I personally, my own story is that I was first defiled by the occult when I was a little child by being out on Halloween night. And I was walking around minding my own business, with my buddy going door to door getting candy. And all of a sudden I looked up in the sky, and this is a beautiful October evening, but I looked up in the sky, and instead of being clear, it was full of what I imagined were demons, giant black, leathery, evil things with red eyes. And those eyes burned into my soul. And from that time on, I started to have an unhealthy interest, even as a child, in things of the occult, in things involving witchcraft and the paranormal. And see, that was happening because back then nobody taught about the dangers of Halloween. My mother and father didn't know that. They didn't know it was dangerous. They thought it was part of their cultural tradition. But a lot of people don't understand that Halloween was illegal in America until some of my ancestors, the Irish, came over here in the 19th century and brought Halloween with them. But most states in the early part of American history would not allow the celebration of Halloween because they knew it was the devil's holiday.
And now, people need to hear the truth, and, we don't hold nothing back and nothing sugar-coated because truth shouldn't be sugar-coated. Now, you want to get into the gory details because people need to hear this. The gory details and meanings of trick-or-treat, the jack-o'-lantern, all the little things on Halloween.
Well, see, you're talking again about Baal worship, and Baal worship involves child sacrifice. Yep. And the idea of trick-or-treat went back to the time that it was expected every year that a family in a village would have to give up their child to be sacrificed to Baal or to Molech or whatever the name of the deity was. And it's interesting, even in the British Isles, which is where a lot of people are associating Halloween with, there is a god named Bel, B-E-L, which is just another version of Baal. In any event, and you basically had a choice. The priest would come of these evil groups, and they would mark the door of that house. And that house, you either had to turn over your youngest child to them for sacrifice, or they would destroy the village. So that's the origin of trick or treat. Today, it's like, okay, you give us candy, or we'll TP your home, or we'll soap your windows, or, ha, 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 and it's all good fun. Well, no, it isn't. And because
they used to, and if you didn't give the child, the tree was, they put a hexagram. I drew one out here. I'm bad, but I'm drawing here, but they would mark a hexagram on your door, which you would invite demons into the house to kill somebody. And in the hexagram, regardless of what other people say, whatever, the hexagram is probably the most powerful talisman in all of the occult. Is that correct,
yeah. Well, yes, and it is, it is definitely a symbol that attracts evil spirits, but I would want to clarify, because there's a lot of stuff going around about this, it's not the same thing as the Star of David. A hexagram has a circle around it. And that's what gives it, it's like kind of concentrates its occult power. I've studied many, many magical workbooks over the years, back when I was a sorcerer and a witch. And you'll almost never find a six-pointed star in a magical workbook unless it is inside of a circle. Just like you'll usually see a pentagram, which is a five-pointed star, inside of a circle. And so, don't assume, because a lot of people will get into these anti-Semitic tirades over the fact that the symbol of Judaism is the Star of David, the Magen David, and that is not the same thing as a hexagram. But yeah, you are right. They would draw this on the household, and then they would be smitten by demons, or maybe even physically killed by the priests unless they turned over their child.
And the jack-o'-lanterns, what I learned is what they did was they took human melted flesh, filled it up as wax to basically as a candle. That's the jack-o'-lantern, because you were the jack and the lantern. Is that correct?
I've heard that, yeah. What people don't understand is that, in ancient Britain, there were no pumpkins. I mean, pumpkins are from the New World. And so actually they would use what you're describing, or else they would also use large turnips and things like that, and they would put candles inside of them.
That's right, yep.
It's really, really gross things because, again, this is all rooted in bloodletting, because the whole idea, you know, we see this in the Bible in 1 Kings 18, the idea that the pagan priests believe there's power in like gashing themselves and cutting themselves and shedding blood, either their own blood or more usually other people's blood. And there's the belief in that by doing that you release occult power to feed Satan. And of course, you know, that's not true, but yet it's a way of what I call promoting spiritual terrorism. Because if a community is terrified that they're going to be killed by this satanic priesthood, they're going to give over their goods and their children, whatever the devil wants. And we need to stop allowing that to happen, because nowadays, for example, we've industrialized this with abortion. We've created a huge industry of child sacrifice.
Oh yeah, I think it was what was that? We had that guy, and he's a black preacher. His website, he had a website. Basically, he showed the abortions by the minute.
Mm-hmm.
Reverend Childress. I'm sorry, Reverend Childress. He had a website, and it's like a counter showing the abortions by the second. I mean, just in the United States alone, I mean, 40,000 since May, I believe it was, 40,000 kids dead just in the United States alone, and since May of this year, and it really bothered me. I mean, I was up all night that night because it just really got inside me to know, as we're speaking right now, some child is being sacrificed, I call it, because they need this child sacrifice, and that's why they dress kids in Halloween costumes like ghouls and goblins, because it's a mock sacrifice, especially on Halloween.
Well, yes. And the problem is that every one of those abortions is regarded by Satanists as a way of releasing evil energy. You know, it's horrible because, as you say, it's a destruction of a child, and many people in our nation have just kind of taken it for granted, and they've gotten, their hearts have been hardened, because what does it say about a culture when they are killing their own children? You know, at the rate of, like you say, thousands of children a year. So this is horrifying.
Is there any you guys can pull that up, that website there with the counter? Yeah, if you go down, this is abortion photo. I don't know if it's in photos, but I don't know, probably there's a counter at the bottom of the website. I'm sorry, Bill, I just wanted to see this because it just like really, there's a counter, I think, of the abortion photos. You go to the bottom of it, there's a counter. Yeah, and, I'm sorry, Bill, go ahead.
Well, one other thing about Halloween, too, is that even just I mean, I'm like 60 years old and some, and, you know, when I was a kid, and look what happened to me, Halloween was pretty innocent. I mean, in the last 10 or 15 years, we got little kids running around dressed as Freddy Krueger or as, you know, Jason from Friday the 13th, you know, and there's all this blood and all this gore. I mean, I walk by the mall, you know, and I try to stay away from it, but there's this Halloween store, and they have very highly sexualized costumes for little girls, and they have very gory, evil-looking things for young kids that aren't even, you know, 8 or 9 years old, and they're dressing them up as axe murderers and stuff like that. And what do you think that does to a child, you know, at a young age, to expose them to this sort of thing? Because once a child's spirit is defiled by things like this, it goes back to spiritual warfare. That child, until, you know, the salvation of Messiah can come into their life, that child is going to be messed up by that. And even some of these churches and other nonprofit organizations and communities will have haunted houses. We have a couple of them in our community, like done by the YMCA or the Boy Scouts or whatever. And again, the whole point of them is to terrify kids. It's like a fun house, ha, ha, ha. But yet what people don't realize is if you just seriously scare a child and make them shriek, you know, that kind of terror will open up a spiritual doorway. It will open up a hole in their soul that evil spirits can come in and defile them.
And what it does, too, I mean, psychologically, I mean, back in the early parts of the country, you know when the country was founded, people had a great knowledge in the Bible. I mean, what they're trying to do is basically take the Bible away and say, you know what, you need to be scared of this evil. And the Bible teaches us, no, don't be scared of it. You know, basically confront it, know the enemy and expose it. But the way the system is today is keep your mouth shut and be afraid of it. You know, don't ask questions, don't do nothing. And, you know, that's why they condition these kids to be scared of everything. So they don't ask questions. And can I keep you for another 20 minutes? Do you mind?
Absolutely.
All right, I'm going to take a phone call. Joey from Texas, you're on the air. Sorry, guys. These guys are working hard. They've been working all night here. And, you know, it's... Yeah, Joe, you there? Joey from Texas. From the Lone Star State. How you doing? FEMA Region 6.
Hey, can you hear me now?
Yep, I can hear you. You got a question for Mr. Schnoebelen?
Well, first of all, I wanted to say, Badandi, you're awesome for getting Bill Schnoebelen on. I couldn't believe it when I heard that.
Well, the thing is, I went, you know, to the demand because I listen to the fans like we all do here, and it's hard to respond because it's just so much. And I heard of people, we need to talk about the Illuminati. We need to expose them. We need to get to deep details about certain things. And I heard that, and I'm like, bam, when I got my opportunity to be on the air here, I said, we need Mr. Schnoebelen because this guy is not recognized. You don't see him all over the, you know, all the radio shows or anything. This guy is basically a diamond in the rough. He needs to be heard. Me and Mr. Schnoebelen, we could stand here for the next 6 hours and wouldn't even touch the fabric of the occult. And you got a question?
Yeah. Me and my dad have been talking about this, but I was wondering, Bill, could you talk more about the Magi, I believe going back before the Sumerians, and then also its relation to the mentioning of the Magi during Jesus' birth, and why it has different names and different versions of the Bible, like the Jehovah's Witness Bible and the Mormon LDS one.
Okay, that's kind of an odd mixture, but to get to the Magi thing, the Magi were Chaldean astronomers and astrologers, and they're mentioned in the book of Daniel. And Daniel was the leader of them at one point, the prophet Daniel. And but over the centuries, like a lot of things, the 200 or 300 years, some of them got corrupt. But the intriguing thing about this is, if you study it out, is that they were originally, they turned into priests of Zoroaster, and Zoroastrianism is the ancestor of the modern Farsi religion, which is the basically the religion in, I think it's Persia or Iran. And, of course, now they're Muslims, but there's this underpinning underneath of it. And what happened with Daniel is he gave all of these really specific prophecies about the coming Messiah. And he was very, very wealthy. And he, you know, because he kept getting the kings, he'd solve the king's problems, and he'd solve the king's dreams, interpret their dreams prophetically, and they'd give him all this money. So he had this huge amount of money, and he foretold the time of the coming of Messiah. And he ended up giving a legacy to these magi that were his pupils. That when you see a certain star coming up in a certain constellation, the constellation of Betula, which is the Hebrew way of saying Virgo, that a virgin shall conceive and bring forth a son, you should take all of this wealth that I have bequeathed you and travel west to the land of Israel and give it to the king of the Jews, who will be a young child. And so that's what they did. So, in a sense, the Magi were actually serving the purposes of the Almighty, even though they were not actually aware of it at the time. But yet they ended up actually getting saved because they followed the star, and they ended up, we all know the story. But there's a lot more to the story. So that's the deal about the Magi. Now, in terms of the Bible versions, we very much strongly insist on the King James Bible. The counterfeit Bibles are everywhere. And, of course, the Jehovah's Witness Bible is one of the worst, out there. And at the same time, though, I mean, what people don't know is that many of the modern Bibles that are used by Christians, like the New American Standard Bible, the NIV Bible, are based on the same text as the Jehovah's Witness Bible. and that's a whole discussion in itself, which we probably don't have time to get into. But I just, especially if you're doing spiritual warfare, because all the other modern Bibles will attack the deity of Christ. They will remove references to the blood of Christ. They will, do other things to denigrate Bible truth. Like, for example,
look at the NIV, for example. That's a New World Order Bible right there. That thing's disgusting. I mean, you should burn that Bible if you have one. And we got to move on. And thank you, Joey from Texas. Great hearing from you. And we're going to go to Julius from Georgia. You're on the air. How you doing?
Great, Mr. Bernardi. How are you?
Fine. How are you? And how are you liking the money bomb so far?
Oh, I think it's great, man. Here's the thing. You guys see things in terms of sort of a binary opposite, good and evil, God versus Satan. And here's the really funny thing, man. I'm a neo-pagan. I follow the Germanic path. And if I had a choice between the secular world where, like, the church is denied and God is thrown out of all the schools and all this kind of stuff, I would reject that in favor of Christianity. So I favor gun rights. I'm against abortion. I like to stand for everything you guys say. But then when you just say, like, it just feels like there's a lot of judgment and a lot of hate, and it's rough, dude.
Well,
like,
there's two kinds of Christians out there, okay? There's a very rare Christian, which is a true Bible-believing Christian that doesn't follow religion, that doesn't go to these 501c3 churches, because the mainstream churches out there, they promote that. We're better than anybody else. We don't have to worry about nothing because we're going to be magically beamed up by Scotty, before all the bad stuff happens. And that's what, these churches teach. And, again, it's two kinds of Christians out there. I mean, a real Christian doesn't belong to a religion. A real Christian knows the Bible on its own. They don't judge anybody. I mean, you look at, we got Catholics and Christians out there who's yelling and swearing at gay people, you're going to go to hell, instead of, nicely talking to them, or people who support abortion. You're going to go to hell. You don't do that. Them being gay, if you swear, okay, it's just the same amount of sin as that person being gay. And, they don't realize this stuff. There's no degree in sin. And everybody, all of us, myself, I sin all day, every day. And, the thing is repentance. But, if you really wanted to, I'm not trying to throw the Bible down your throat, brother, but if you really wanted to know the real God, the real Yah'Shua Messiah, okay, study the Bible on your own. Don't listen to these half-bred priests from the Vatican, or these false prophets like the 700 Club, Billy Graham, Pat Robertson. These guys are evil, bottom line. And I don't have time to discuss all that, but these people are evil. If you want to get to know God, whatever, do it on your own, and ask for guidance as well. And you got any comments on that, Bill?
Well, yeah, I would pretty much agree. And I would just say that, realize that the true message of Yah'Shua, of Jesus, is not ever hate. I was a pagan for 16 years, and, no Christian ever witnessed to me. Nobody ever tried to tell me about the Lord, and I wish they had, because I never knew how empty I was until I asked Him into my heart. And you're right, it's not about hate, and it's not about going to some building or some religion. It's about a relationship with the Creator of the universe.
No, absolutely. When God talks about the church, He's not talking about a building. He's not talking about the structure, what this priest with this $1 million necklace or whatever. He's talking about a church is you. You're the church. The physical body, the flesh is the temple of the church. Just me and Bill here, we make up the church here because we're talking. When two or more gather in His name, that's the church. It could be in your basement, your car, anywhere. And but the religions will never teach you that. They'll tell you, you have to come here. You got to pay us. They'll bring up that Bible verse, 10% of your tithes to the church, but they don't bring up the other verse, how it was abolished later. They'll throw that at you, and, to make you, the thing is about religions, even Jesus in the book of Thomas said about organized religion. And when he says money is the root of all evil, he was talking about the first corporations were the churches. The religions out there that scare you. You're going to go to hell if you don't come here, go to confession, blah, 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 when the book of Matthew debunks the whole catechism on its own. And I'm not picking on just Catholics, but all religions are the same. They got the equal evilness. They've been infiltrated, especially by the Illuminati. I mean, I could go on all night with this stuff. And we got Brandon from Kentucky. How you doing?
I'm doing great, and how about yourself?
Oh, not bad. Staying up late here, supporting the money bomb here. It's awesome.
Oh, yeah.
And we got one guy, John Bowney. He's from Kentucky there, too. But anyway, you got a question for Mr. Schnoebelen?
Yeah, actually, I had a two short questions. One was, what is his take on the book of Edidorphia? It's a Freemasonry book. If there is any dangers in owning that book, and Look to the East. Also, what is his take on this? All these end time events that are going on that would seem apocalyptic, and I'm wondering if he thinks that it's the Illuminati manipulating the things of the Bible, or the Bible is actually coming true. So that would be my questions, and thank you guys for your time.
I must confess, I've never heard of this book of Edidorphia, but if it's a Masonic book, I really don't advise having it in your house. It depends on why you have it. I mean, at one time I had a lot of these kind of weird books, and even now I've prayed over them. I've pled the blood of Yah'Shua over them, and I keep them somewhere else. I don't keep them in my home. So I do not, even though I'm a minister of the gospel and I have them for holy reasons, I really don't recommend it unless you're a minister or unless you're really very spiritually mature, because they can really draw malignant influences into your home, especially if you happen to have children. I'm sorry, I forgot the other half of the question.
You still there, Brandon?
Yeah, I'm still here. The other half of the question, I actually mentioned another book was Look to the East, and the point on the books were, I've heard that people have been killed over having the books, actually owning the books in print. And the other question was, do you, Bill, believe that there's Illuminati actually manipulating these end-time events? I mean, the things that are happening on a daily basis, I mean, through, say, weather technology, these sort of things, or do you actually believe that the Bible events are happening as they are said? Thank you.
Well, and the first thing, I know there are certain books that are so dangerous that just having them in your home, people have died, killed by being driven mad, being driven insane, or their children were. I don't know about these two books, but if they're Masonic, as I said, I'd burn them. I'd get rid of them. In terms of the other thing, you need to realize that sometimes we see this in the Bible, that the Almighty will use pagan kings to do his bidding. He will use, people that are evil to bring enough judgment into a society, like Israel in the case of the Old Testament, to try and bring them to repentance. And I don't know for sure. I did a whole talk on weather warfare and scalar technology that was called Russia's, secret weapon to destroy America many years ago. I know that they have the power to create hurricanes, to create storms, to create earthquakes, all of these things. That's out there. I mean, the documentation is there. But whether or not they're doing it to mimic the Bible or whether it's being done by the Almighty, that I don't know for sure. I do know that they often, by they I mean the Illuminati, will use weather technology to create disasters, to try and just create more chaos, because they believe the more chaos they create, the more likely it is that they can move in with their wonderful plan to, save the world, quote unquote.
And we got Mitch from Wisconsin. How you doing? You're on the air, Infowars.com.
Hello?
Hi, Mitch, you there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you loud and clear from FEMA Region 6. How you doing?
Oh, man. Well, I'm doing good. How are you guys doing?
Oh, great. How you liking the money bomb so far? 48 hours, man. We're pushing it.
I'm loving it. This is actually my first year.
Oh, great. I'm glad you're staying up for this, because we're touching on some very important issues. And you have a question for Mr. Schnoebelen?
Yeah, I kind of do, because I did have a question, and you actually, he touched up on it while I was listening, researching all the Illuminati stuff and all their practicing and magic and rituals and whatnot, and then just other information that I've came across, doing research. I just kind of wanted to know, like, how much are they into doing psychedelics during rituals, during practicing magic?
Well, I know when I was involved with these things, it was primarily using a very powerful form of hashish, which can be psychedelic, and using that, and to a lesser extent using things like peyote and mescaline and ayahuasca. So yeah, this is done because it's believed in the occult that these things open up your third eye, and they're very, very dangerous. You know, you don't want to blow open your third eye because I mean, you know, what it really does is it invites in what the Bible calls a spirit of divination, and that's a demon. And once that demon strongman gets into you, you may acquire occult power, which is, of course, what the Illuminati want. They want to have occult power. But I'm talking about the average person, and especially a Christian. You do not want to be taking those kind of chemicals because it will totally blow away your mind. And, you know, I mean, even from this, because I've had courses on a graduate level in psychopharmacology. What these things do is they mimic psychosis. In other words, they make you temporarily schizophrenic, and that's not a good place to be. And when you add the demonic component, that's why when you hear of young people or even not so young people taking these drugs, and I've taken all of them in my evil past, you really end up with a bucket load of demons in your lap, and you know it's a horrible experience to try and get out of. That's why many people who get bound up in drugs end up trying to commit suicide and stuff like that. It's just a horrible thing.
Oh, it is. And you got any other questions before we move to our last caller?
No, just want to comment on his answer. And I do agree how the average person could easily have very bad results if they indulged in psychedelics. But touching on what you said, what the Bible refers to it as, hasn't there been positive experiences that people have told? And I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure someone did research into like the Dead Sea Scrolls and said that the entire religion might be a misinterpretation of a mushroom cult. Have you ever heard that?
Yeah, that's the work of John Allegro. I think it's kind of, with all due respect, I think it's pretty much nonsense. He talks about magic mushrooms and how that's really, you know, what actually Yah'Shua was a mushroom. And I mean, obviously you can believe what you want, but I really don't think that I've heard of anybody having a real positive spiritual experience with psychedelics.
Oh, absolutely not. I mean, it leads to destruction. I mean, anything to do with drugs at all like that. I mean, the thing is, you're supposed to be in your conscious state of mind, and to be subconscious and out to la la land or whatever, that you're walking dangerous path right there. And we got to go to our last caller. Then we're going to have Bill Schnoebelen. He's going to have the floor for the last 5 minutes. And we got Mark from Oregon. You're on the air. How you doing?
Hey, I'm doing okay, Dan. And greetings to you and Bill.
Oh, thank you. And yeah. I'm glad you're staying up late for this. I mean, we're doing the graveyard shift over here, pushing it into overdrive.
Oh, I've caught about at least 90% of the Money Bomb today. It's
great.
Been a real special thing. It really has.
This is our WrestleMania. This is our Super Bowl, you know what I mean? Because it's a time of year we all get to come together and say, yeah, we got to put out good product for the people. And that's what, that's what you're funding, because the more, the more people give, the more we can expand our operation to provide shows like this. And Alex has been talking expand the radio show. My dream was to do a night show. And, I would love to do a show like this, at least once a week from now, whatever. But, I mean, we need the money to do something like this. And to bring people like Bill on, which I greatly appreciate because he's staying up late for this. And but anyway, you got a question? Yeah,
the sun will be coming up before too long. We all are at. It's past late.
Yeah, it's that's why they call it the graveyard, because everybody's a walking dead zombie right now.
Oh, I look at it as the park on a beautiful Sunday morning. The quality of the light kind of gets sublimated beneath the gravity and the truth of the conversation. But Bill, I think it was a 4 cassette tape set. It was before a few years before CDs, back in the mid-'90s. That you had made through the Prophecy Club. and I can't remember the name of the.
I think Exposing the Illuminati from Within.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think you hit it right on the head, Dan. And I was very impressed there. I thought that you had a Christian witness of the persuasion to non-believers and of the spiritual strength as an underlay and an overlay coming out of your vast experience in the occult. And I was very impressed with you. And about 6 or 7 years ago, Bill, I suggested to Alex on a call-in that he have you on as a guest, but he really hadn't heard much of you. And I'm so glad that Dan brought you on tonight, Bill, because I think you have, it's not alone, but it is unique in some very ways that stand out strongly. Say comparatively with Doc Marquise, he's also very good. He tends to be more intellectual, which is fine because we all have those different qualities which the Lord uses. But you bring your heart to it in a very big way, Bill. And it'd be a great idea, Dan. It's just a suggestion if you could have Alex to bring Bill on and perhaps Doc Marquise, because these are very timely.
I would love to bring him on. Actually, I would love to have both of these guys on at once. I mean, if I ever got the opportunity again, I would love to have both of them on because, I mean, you know, there's a lot of people out there who write books about the Illuminati, whatever, but these two people, they're the real deal. I mean, they've been there. They've done that. You know, I mean, that's why I don't look to other people for, you know, when I do research and all that. I, you know, research under Bill Schnoebelen, Mark, even Fritz Springmeier and Cisco Wheeler and all these people who've been there and done that. And, yeah, I mean, these guys are great, a lot of information. And, you know, I'll just say, wow, because, Bill, I mean, like, we could be here all night. We didn't even cover half the subjects we wanted to talk about with Mitt Romney and everything else. And, Mark, you got any other questions?
I wanted to ask you what your views are on Mitt Romney relative to Joseph Smith's white horse prophecy, which I would imagine you're probably familiar with, at least generally.
Oh, I'm familiar with it specifically. Yeah.
Well, if there was ever a time the country seems to be losing its constitution, it would seem to be now, and he happens to be a high Mormon in running. So, could this...
Well, we have gotten a couple of DVDs out there, including this Throne of Fools, where I talk about Mitt Romney versus Obama. And, of course, now that we're getting down to the wire, I think it's very important information. And I do warn people that he's a high priest, Romney is, in the LDS Church. He's part of a fifth-generation Mormon dynasty. He's not just a Mormon. He's a very high-level Mormon. And they have their own view, which you alluded to in the White Horse Prophecy, that one day an elder of Israel will save America, will save the Constitution, and then will start a benevolent dictatorship that they call the United Order. And it will basically be a communistic society that's run by the prophet, seer, and revelator of the Mormon Church. And, I mean, I don't have time to get into the whole thing, but I really, as dangerous as Obama is, Romney in his own
Bill,
way.
I hate to cut you off. I'm sorry. Yeah, we got like about 30 seconds left, whatever. Your final take, your website once again with oneaccord.org, and I appreciate so much you coming on this late, and it's been a pleasure. And stay right there after the show because I want to talk to you during the break. And you know, if you want to promote your website, you got 10 seconds.
Yeah, www.withoneaccord.org.